from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Creating and maintaining a sustainable environment.
We've got to have cattle that have a lot of capacity so they can eat a lot of grass.
How ranchers in the Nebraska Sandhills are making the best use of the land as our Sustainable Ranchers Tour continues. What remains of Hurricane Debbie continues to bring torrential rain and flooding.
And it looks like she is wearing out her welcome.
As the market bounces back from Monday's big drop, while concerns remain for investors and farmers right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Great performance in the field makes Pioneer brand corn #1 in America. For a winning season, it's Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Turnaround Tuesday on Wall Street as it bounced back from its worst day in nearly 2 years. But concerns about a recession continue to remain, with some analysts saying the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates too high for too long. Now, the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago president trying to reassure investors following Monday's market chaos that spilled over into the livestock markets. But don't expect an emergency Fed meeting to cut interest rates. He says it's not the panel's job to pump up the market.
The Fed's job is very straightforward. Maximize employment, stabilize prices, and maintain financial stability. If the conditions collectively start coming in that on the through line, there's deterioration on any of those parts, we're going to fix it.
But Friday's report of a 0.2 percentage point unemployment increase caught the market's attention, sparking those recession fears. Now, the Fed has another meeting scheduled for about 6 weeks from now, and some analysts believe it could cut rates then. Those higher interest rates having an impact on farmland values right now. Two ag lenders saying for the first time in 5 years, values declined in Iowa. Farm Credit Services of America and Frontier Farm Credit releasing its benchmark farmland values report. They say since January, land values have made modest gains in eastern Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. While in Iowa, the value of farmland has declined overall 2.4%. But they say despite the pullback, Iowa's real estate values are up nearly 60% since 2019. And across all 5 states they serve, values remain at or near record levels. And despite lower commodity prices overall and higher interest rates, the new Ag Economy Barometer shows farmer sentiment has improved. The monthly survey from Purdue University and the CME Group coming in with a reading of 113. Now that's up 8 points from last month. At the same time, the index of current conditions and the index of future expectations were also higher. The findings a bit puzzling to economists at Purdue, considering prices for principal commodities weakened from mid-June to mid-July.
When we ask producers what their biggest concerns are for the upcoming year, they continue to point to the risk of high input cost, followed by the risk of low crop and livestock prices and rising interest rates. Interestingly, on the July survey, though, fewer producers chose rising interest rates as a big concern, and more producers said they were worried about the risk of lower crop and livestock prices.
Now, despite this month's improvement in farmer investment perspective, their outlook on capital expenditures remained weak compared to a year ago. Happening right now, we're continuing to track what remains of Hurricane Debbie as the storm unleashes potentially historic rainfall in Georgia and South Carolina, bringing with it the chances for catastrophic flooding. Brian Abel has an update for us.
Tropical storm Debbie is here, and it looks like she is wearing out her welcome.
Debbie's 2-day deluge on South Carolina and Georgia is adding up. Charleston is one of several cities that's received nearly a foot of rain as more keeps falling.
Anticipate another 3 to 6 inches over the next 12 to 14 hours.
Charleston's mayor says a curfew is working, keeping people off the streets. He's now extending it through early Wednesday morning.
We especially don't need any yahoos driving through the water and causing damage to property.
Overnight, a suspected tornado swept through nearby Monk's Corner, upending vehicles and destroying a number of buildings. 2 other twisters were confirmed Monday night southwest of Charleston in Edisto Beach and Seabrook.
Unfortunately, I don't believe this storm is done with us yet.
Georgia's governor on Tuesday warning residents to stay hunkered down and prepare for more possible property damage.
Both models are showing that rain will come back, potentially in the worst case scenario in a big way.
Nearly 2,000 National Guard troops have been mobilized for search and rescue efforts. In Florida, about 500 people were safely moved to higher ground around Sarasota, and water rescues continue in parts of the state this hour. Bracing for Debbie's heavy rains next, the Northeast, which could see several inches over the weekend. In Charleston, I'm Brian Abel reporting.
USDA's latest crop progress report indicates little of the cotton crop, where the rains are forecast to be heaviest, have open bolls, and that makes them more susceptible to damage from heavy rain and wind. The report showing that only 8% of cotton bolls are opening. That's 1% ahead of the 5-year average. In Georgia and South Carolina, just 1% of bolls are open. Now, USDA also shows that 67% of the corn crop is rated good to excellent right now. That's down 1% from last week. For soybeans, 68% good to excellent, up 1%. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht continues to track the heavy rainfall in the mid-Atlantic, while heat and wildfires remain a big concern in the west.
Yeah, basically looking at two extremes. One on the East Coast, which is going to be the extreme rainfall settling in over South and North Carolina, and then working up towards the East Coast with this tropical system here being Debbie. Again, category isn't a big factor in this, whether it is a tropical storm, category 1, category 2, or 3. It's the amount of moisture wrapped up that is going to be falling in and across the southeast. And one way you can kind of get a sense of that, the winds aren't going to be all that strong. Now, they are going to be gusty, but we're not expecting much in the way of a strong hurricane to go along with the flooding potential. This is just one of those flooding potential situations back in the southeast. And then relatively quiet for the most part back over towards the Four Corners. We are going to be eyeing some stronger winds. You can see how these white lines come together as we go into the future. Some stronger winds fueling that dry air mass and also that dry air back here to the west. That is going to entice some wildfires to continue, if not strengthen, off on the west and the west coast. And a better look at the damage and flooding brought by Hurricane Debbie. This is in Florida. Police say hundreds of people had to be rescued from the high waters. National Weather Service says more than 12 inches of rain fell from the storm as it moved over Sarasota. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Vice President Kamala Harris has picked her running mate for the presidential election. It's Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. The 60-year-old has been the governor of Minnesota since 2018. Now, he previously served 6 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. He was born in West Point, Nebraska, served in the Army National Guard, and then worked as a teacher. In Congress, Walz focused on veterans issues and ag policy. The selection of Walz is seen as a strategic move to appeal to both rural and progressive voters. Experts say Walz was ag-friendly while serving on the House Ag Committee and as a governor. AgDay's Michelle Rook spoke with the president of the Minnesota Soybean Growers Association. He says while Walz has supported biofuels, the organization did face a battle with him in the state legislature when he tried to push a low-carbon fuel standard in Minnesota, similar to California's low-carbon fuel standard.
Definitely some aspects of it that, yeah, he has been farmer-friendly. Have we completely agreed with everything that he has done? Absolutely not. But like I said, we have always been allowed to have a seat at the table and let farmers have discussions with him about everything moving ahead in our policy.
One poll right now, the Economist poll tracker, shows that Kamala Harris has taken the lead over former President Donald Trump. It marks the first time a Democratic contender has led in the national popular vote since October of 2023. It was a much calmer day for global markets on Tuesday, although soybeans saw a double-digit drop. We'll have details on that coming up next in Markets Now. And later, balancing the demands of cattle production with the delicate nature of the Nebraska sandhills. We'll see how one ranch family is making it work in the country. It was a turnaround Tuesday of sorts for the broader market, but commodities were a different story. Michelle Rook has more in Markets Now.
Vince Boddicker with Farmers Trading Company is back with analysis. So corn and soybeans could not extend gains on Tuesday, Vince, after a couple of up days. So did we run up into chart resistance there, or what happened?
I think in the beans you did, Michelle. Last week, I think it was or the week before when we rallied, we came up to that 1042, 1043, and then failed miserably, and you came up to the same area and stopped.
Yeah, 409, 410 area kind of stopped us out in corn though too, didn't it?
It did. We've got, as we talked, you've got some different moving averages there. If we run a straight 20-day moving average or somewhere in that 409, we happen to run a exponential, which gets us around 411. So we didn't get quite there, but yes, it's there. But I think you're still going to see selling up here. There's lots of farmers. I got to move old crop corn, and again, next Monday we do have our monthly supply demand report. I'm not sure we find friendly things out of there. There are some talk that we're going to get reduced acres, but is that enough to do something? We'll find out.
And then in the case of both corn and soybeans, obviously we've got pretty strong crop ratings for this time of year, don't we?
We do. Corn came in on Monday as expected, down 1%, and the beans up 1%. I think it was a surprise that's a 2% swing, so you probably got some people that bought on Monday, decided to sell or get out of longs, whatever the case was.
And of course, grains, the last couple of days have been reacting to some money flow with the outside markets, including the stock market. Wheat market did manage to end higher, though, on Tuesday. So was that all just short covering or money flow there, too?
I think it was. You look at the rush over the last 2 or 3 days, rushes up their offers for selling wheat by 20 to 30 bucks a ton. And you think that catches some attention. Whether they get business, we'll find out. I got to believe they think they will, or they wouldn't have raised it. And as you talked in the corn, the wheat came right up to my 20-day moving average in that Kansas City September on Tuesday and stopped and then backed off. So again, need to get through that, I think, before we're going to do a lot more to the upside.
Okay, thanks for the recap of Vince Boddicker Farmers Trading Company. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Yeah, really dealing with the flooding potential in the southeast. We're already maxing out the legend, 70 to 100% in the purple / pink here. Now that's towards North Carolina and South Carolina, but look how far we extend this. This is just for Wednesday with the yellow and the green, up to about a 40% chance of some flooding on the East Coast. When we start to factor in a trough on Friday and Saturday, you'll see this really start to expand. But that's 2 straight days that we're looking at 70 to 100% chance of flooding through North and South Carolina. Into Friday, we start to see this lift more up to the north as we see, again, more 15 to 40% chance of some flooding potential. And the thing about this is we're expecting a lot of rainfall, but we're starting to really spread it out along the East Coast. As that trough moves through, higher chance of some flooding, as well as back towards Colorado and even into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, just north of parts of Oklahoma as well, with again that yellow indicating 15 to 40%. So what this looks like in the precipitation outlook, we keep August 11th through the 15th at or just above normal with these wet conditions and trying to dry out in the Gulf of Mexico, something we certainly need, not only here, but over here as well. The temperature outlook, we start to flip back towards the heat across the United States, the 13th through the 19th. And remember, the hotter it gets, or if we stay above normal, that is going to set in motion the possibility of some stronger storms as well. Good check of what's going on in the jet stream. You won't see much back out here towards the west coast where we're dealing with some of those wildfires and that dry air. You will start to see troughs kind of working in from the north to the south Thursday and into Friday. That is what's going to spread that rain through the northeast. Auburn Hills, Michigan, former home of the Detroit Pistons. High around 77 degrees, low of 58. South Dakota, morning showers, high of 81, low of 61. We'll finish it off in Washington in the northwest. Renton, 83 degrees with sunny skies.
Farm Journal's Pork Business taking the pulse of the industry right now as part of its second State of the Pork Industry report. Pork editor Jennifer Scheich talking with a panel of what she calls her pork rock stars, comparing this year's latest sow and grow finish performance numbers to what folks are seeing in their barns.
Looking at the sow performance would be in that time frame of April 1st to June 30th of 2024, kind of comparing that to the same time period back in 2023. There's a lot of positives that we're going to see out there with the pigs weaned per mated female per year, up 0.7 pigs, which in turn has shown improvements when it comes to the breed by 7 days. By almost a little over 1%. And then you've got where we're breeding less returns, which ultimately is giving us a higher farrowing rate.
You can read more about the Q2 report by heading to porkbusiness.com. More good news for the pork industry. A parasite that once posed a major food safety risk to the industry is no longer a concern. Now, the Ag Research Service says scientists are no longer finding pigs infected with trichinella. It comes after a national survey sampling more than 3 million pigs raised under the U.S. Pork Quality Assurance Plus program, and it found 0 animals infected with it. Now, in the past, people in the U.S. have gotten an infection of trichinosis from eating undercooked or raw pork containing the larvae. But it is so rare now that the CDC says only about 15 cases are confirmed each year. A healthy herd and green grass is every cowboy's dream. Well, up next, we're off to the Nebraska Sandhills to see how ranchers are making that a reality in the country. If you stripped away the grass in the Sandhills of Nebraska, you would have nothing but desert, which makes the land much better suited for cattle than for farming. As AgDay's Michelle Rook learns at the Shovel Dot Ranch, climate-smart ag practices are helping the operation find harmony with the natural landscape.
Here at the Shovel Dot Ranch, they're preserving this unique ecosystem in the Sandhills of Nebraska through their regenerative practices as well as holistic grazing management.
The focus on conservation dates back to 1883 when the Buells homesteaded in the Sandhills. Without it, the Shovel Dot Ranch wouldn't have survived, but 4 generations later, Homer Buell has taken it up a notch.
This is the biggest resource we have, is the grass. So we choose to harvest it with cattle, but to look down and to know what's there and know the plants and your ground cover and just a lot of things, you learn a lot by looking down. So that's really changed in the way I manage.
The ranch spans nearly 15,000 acres, and it's divided into 68 to 69 sub-pastures with permanent fencing and water.
Our pasture size runs from anywhere from a half section down to maybe 200 acres, and maybe even a little less than that.
That allows them to rotate their cattle often to allow adequate rest time for their grass. It's promoted biodiversity as well in various warm and cool season species, so they have grass year-round and can manage through drought.
One of the main things is to move cattle. Early in the part of the summer, we don't probably have any cattle that stay more than 4 or 5 days in one pasture, and then they move on, and we'll graze a little longer, maybe a week and a half or whatever later in the summer.
Buell says they use the Texas A&M Grazing Manager program to create grazing plans and stocking rates for the 1,600 yearlings and cows they're running.
And so we know where the cattle are going to be pretty much late winter, where they're going to be the entire summer. And then we adjust that based upon rainfall. And we make sure we don't overgraze at any one time, and then use that program to track how we're affecting the land over time.
And since the Sandhills don't produce hard grass, they've had to adapt their breeding program to compensate.
We've got to have cattle that have a lot of capacity so they can eat a lot of grass.
The Shovel Dot Ranch also has to continually manage one of the biggest threats to their grassland, which is cedar tree encroachment.
It's one of the hardest things we do to try to keep up with the cedar trees, and we hire some people to come in once in a while to help us catch up. But that'd be one of the bigger things.
And Buell says managing cost is the other piece of the sustainability puzzle for them.
If you're going to be profitable, but you've got to know all your numbers, and we've used various software to help us analyze what we're doing there.
But the long-term goal of the Shovel Dot Ranch is to preserve the Sandhills and their way of life for the future.
So sustainability for us is just keeping the 5th generation here, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. And we try to make all our decisions based upon long-term what will be good for everything we manage on this ranch.
I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day in farm country.